Hey guys, it's Phil here, just talking to you today about mass communications. Today we're specifically talking about communications as it pertains to media literacy as well as culture. So before we get really into that, we should probably give a little bit of a definition as to what communications is. While there are a lot of definitions out there about communications, a pretty succinct or basic descriptive definition would be essentially the transference or the sharing of information from a source to a receiver. And that can look a lot of different ways. It can look through, publishing a text, verbal communication, verbal speaking, in which speaking would be the medium there. Just like a text would be technically the medium for which, it's shared through the iPhone or the Android or what have you. But that's essentially what communications is the sharing of information from a source to a receiver. So in 1948, a political scientist named Harold Laswell came up with 5 kind of indicators for the type of communication slash message that you're trying to get across. And the first one that it came up with was, of course, whom, who's sharing this information, who is the speaker, who's the presenter, who's sending that sense of communication. The second one is what? What are they saying? What is this communicator trying to say through their medium or through whatever message that they're trying to share? And then through which channel? So that would be a newspaper. Is it through is it through a text message? Is it through traditional public speaking? Obviously, in Harold Laswell's day, it wouldn't be through a text message because that wasn't around then. But you get to you get it. And then to whom? So basically, it's saying who is receiving this message. We talked about earlier that communication is from a source to a receiver. To whom is the receiver? And lastly, it's to what effect or with what effect. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to elicit a response from the person? In the case of a letter, if you're writing a letter, you may not necessarily want a response. But if you're sending a text, asking a question, that probably implies that you really want an answer back from that person. So those are kind of just the 5 indicators for a type of communication. Now we're going to delve a little bit into culture and what that reflects, what that means, what it entails. Culture is essentially a medium through which people in a civilization will project either thoughts, feelings, beliefs, shared values through a sort of culture. So one could say that different countries have different cultures because they are technically different people groups. They're removed from one another. So they're going to have slightly different cultures. We see that even in states in the United States. Some of the cultures are more tight-knit, some of them are more outstretched. It just kind of depends. So this kind of leads to a kind of vast rainbow, if you will, of human experience. And so some people's experience is going to look a little different based on the culture that they've kind of set up or they've been placed into. And yeah, all culture really is the behavior of members of some sort of social group. And it's basically meaning that is transferred through communication, whether verbal or in literature. And so the tie-in with communications and culture is that of, first of all, what are you learning? What are the values that are being taught? And oftentimes when they're being taught, they're taught through literature, they're taught through books. Nowadays, teaching does involve the internet, so it's taught through that. But it's basically going to boil down to communications playing a huge role in how people adopt their culture based on if they're growing up or even moving from a different country to another, or state rather. And through talking is another one, as far as even accents. Accents vary from place to place, and that has a lot to do with, this is the culture, this has this accent here, this culture has this accent here, or this language here. And that's another big one, is language. Languages vary drastically. And in one culture, communication is a little bit different in terms of the language. In another country, it's different because of the language. So as you can see, communications really has a broad kind of grip on the culture, because of how the information is shared is going to look different from place to place. And now we're going to talk about our topic, media literacy. So boiled down to it, media literacy is just being able to interact with media, whether social, whether it's television, whether it's news, what have you. It's basically being able to understand how to utilize it, and one could argue utilize it successfully. So anybody could pick up, say, an iPad and click on the news application that's already downloaded, and you can scroll. But the difference between somebody who's media literate and media illiterate would be somebody who's able to navigate said news, or be able to search for their own news, sifting through the internet, being able to use the technology and not necessarily let the technology use them. So that's basically a very short version of media literacy. I'll give you an example. So somebody who is media literate would be somebody that seeks out information or news from different outlets, whereas somebody who just subscribes to MSNBC or just Fox News would be getting news. One could argue maybe not, but they're just getting a very narrow view because of either the liberal or conservative bias that one could argue that those channels provide. Another form of media literacy would just be somebody even having an update on news, knowing world events. You could be extremely social media literate. You could have Facebook, you could have Snapchat, you could have Instagram, Twitter, all those fun little applications. But you could have nothing to do with news. You could have no idea what's going on. There are ways to be on Twitter, to be on Facebook, to be on Snapchat, Instagram, without really even looking at news. Twitter accounts, you can follow that which you want to follow, as goes for any other page, essentially, or profile on the other social media accounts. But you can be selective in terms of the information you're taking in. And so somebody who's media illiterate would probably be somebody who just doesn't know how to navigate that, or doesn't even have any kind of faculty for using the social media or the media for their own benefit. Rather, they just kind of are on there mindlessly, or they don't actually gain anything from that experience. So that's essentially kind of showing the contrast between media literacy and illiteracy. So I know that was a lot thrown at you in kind of a short amount of time. I just wanted to thank you for sticking here for this vlog. We're going to do a couple more of these over the course of the next few weeks, and make sure to stick with me. Like I said, my name's Phil Hoffman, and thanks for watching today. We'll see you later.